we're we're humans, right? We are, I believe, broken in a lot of ways, right? And we, of course, we're trying to do some things to fix that, but I think we're prideful by nature and selfish, and I think the pride, especially, like, just we don't want to look at social media. Everybody's showing their highlight reel. And by the way, I'm not one of those people that say social media is terrible, right? Social media is amazing to connect people, but for the most part, be careful though, especially for our younger generation. Everybody's showing their highlight reel, their vacations, and this is the hustle culture, 4 a.m. wake ups and all this stuff. And it's like, that's just not real life. And so I think people are just too afraid to judgment, right? Comparison. There's a lot of different things that factor in there. But I have found that when I open up, it builds so much connection and trust. And even like when I was running my sales team, I was very open with them about a lot of different things in life and in business. And it sears the relationship. And now when I go and I speak about this stuff all the time, it's amazing the stories I hear, how many people come out and say, I was just at a company in Phoenix in January, and I usually, it was a workshop, like a 5-hour workshop. I kick it off sharing my journey, and then I go into the teaching. One guy, after I share, it just opens up the room. There's 35 people in the room or something, executive team, sales team. One guy jumps in and talks about how the company he was at before was so pressure driven, and he was so like struggling immensely, but he didn't feel like he had an outlet. And then he finally left and was so thankful to be at this company. All of a sudden the CEO jumps in and she's like, I just want to let everybody know I've never shared this before. I had a miscarriage this was a sales kickoff meeting 3 or 4 or 5 years ago at sales kickoff, and I never shared with anybody. CIO then says, hey, I had a heart attack a few years ago because I didn't have a release valve. I never said anything to anybody. And the trust that was built in those moments in that space, like it was palpable, you could feel it. And these guys, of course, they're looking to grow the business and, bring in the revenue, and that's all. That's important. It's business. But I believe if we can be authentic and vulnerable and build that connection, and that's it, the human connection piece, the trust, that's where the magic is. And that's when, to me, the business results then follow that.
That's so interesting. I think that as I'm listening to you, Jon, the Instagram reel, right? These are the things that as humans, we love to be inspired, right? We love to aspire. But as I'm listening to you, the humanity is actually in what other people call weakness. And I'm actually going to call it, how about we stop calling it weakness? How about we start calling it, it's real? In the realness of life is that it's not always like winning. And the fact is that the seed bed for, I think, joy comes in the sharing of this realness. Right. How does that hit you? Like when you're going in talking to these like high level, high growth minded, high performing, high productivity type teams. And they think that it's like, no, aspiration. It's the goal. It's the benchmarks. Right. And yet a lot of them are unhappy and they're not finding that joy. I mean, how does that hit you?
Yeah, it's a big deal, right? So so many people struggle. I did a research project about 10 years ago where I interviewed our top 30 or so performers just to try to tease out what I called as success habits. I tried to tease out what the best of the best did. And through the project, I was then asked to give a readout at our sales kickoff meeting, which, by the way, happened to be the same sales kickoff meeting where I had a panic attack a couple of years earlier and had to leave the room.
Oh, wow.
But what I found was our top performers, on paper, they were doing great. Many of them were struggling immensely, not sleeping well, overly stressed out, not good relationships at home. And so that's where, as this journey, it's been a journey for me of the story. You mentioned the arc. I mean, it's truly become like, oh my gosh, this is a real issue in the workplace. And I think giving people, when we show weakness, and again, I hesitate to even call it weakness because to me it's strength. Actually, it unlocks people. It's freedom, right? This Carey unlocked me. He talked about it. I never really had ever heard anybody be that authentic and that open about what their challenges were. And I respected him already because I had seen the work he had done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really incredible. And so I'm amazed by it, honestly, because and it hasn't been perfect. Like there's iterations of it, but every room I've been in the last 10 to 12 years where I share, I mean, I just went to a sports team, a college soccer team last year and talked and I shared, and I had a guy reach out the next day. One of the players said he literally the year before had attempted suicide. And so he was getting help and he was in a great place at that time. But just by me sharing my struggle, he felt the freedom to reach out. Now he's a good friend of mine. I talk to him quite a bit. Great, great kid, going to do amazing things. And I keep telling him, now you got to pay it forward, right? You got to now take whatever it is, who's built into you, whatever your journey is. Because that's the key to me. Our greatest challenges become our greatest opportunities to serve others, right? And we are best in service to our former selves, I believe.
Ooh, say
So
more.
I,
Say
so
more
I,
on that.
I think any room I go into, and of course you want to be or here, right? I think about how do I serve your audience? How do I serve you? I want to be present with you. But I also think about what do I wish I could tell the 20-year-old John or the 10 to 12-year-old John who's sitting in the guidance counselor's office and swept that under the rug, right? Hey, it's going to be okay, but here you have to get in touch with your feelings. You have to have this awareness. You have to, again, be okay not being okay instead of just no, sweep it, let's go. I got stuff to do. I gotta go score the next goal or win the next championship. And that was my mindset for such a long time. And you hit it awesome, Ben. And there's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score, I believe it's called. Fantastic book. And it talks about this idea of, yes, our body whether it's trauma, I mean, there's a million different things that happen to us. And I felt that. So that's why I ran at the Cooper in 14 minutes. That's why I started having panic attacks speaking, because I call it, I like taking out your garbage, right? The garbage truck comes once a week and we take our garbage out, pull the container into the truck and they move on. We pull it back in and then we reload it again next week. We're the same way. If we don't take out our trash emotionally, it's going to fester. It's going to get stinky and smelly and bad things are going to happen. And I live that. And so now I'm on a mission to root that out, especially in the business world, because I think we have to give people an outlet.
Well, I love that you said, let's not call it weakness. And I was thinking about that and like, what could we call it? So often people feel like you got to be strong, and strong means you got to stand tall. Like, but the reality of it is that at a certain point you need to sit. And why do you need to sit? Because that when you're sitting, you're typically in a moment of reflection. And if we actually turn sit into an acronym, this is what I think that like weakness is, or what people can perceive weakness to be. But what it reality is strength in truth.
Mm-hmm.
That when you actually stop standing tall, but you actually move to a sit position, which is strength in truth. I mean, I 1000% agree. I mean, I've had the biggest moments of growth. Our company has had the biggest moments of growth when we actually invested into a strength in truth operating system for like our culture, so that people realize it's actually not in the, hey, this is how I'm just winning. But winning is actually having the awareness to go, well, where are you having headwinds, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I wrote that down. Strength and truth. I love that. And here was my leadership style when I ran a sales team. A lot of leaders think they want to shelter the team from reality. I actually think differently. I think you need to be a realist in those situations. And if there's a struggle at the company or something's going on, I'm not saying you share every detail, but I built so much trust with my sales team by not BSing them and saying, guys, everything's good. Go out and sell. We're great. Right? Instead saying, look, there's some headwinds coming at us. There's struggles. Let's talk about them. Let's give you a container and an outlet to talk about this stuff. But that being said, we still have a job to do. Right? So we were big on, I love the Marcus Aurelius quote about the obstacles of the way. Right? So Ryan Holiday's written a fantastic book about that, which is awesome. So the idea is, right, whatever obstacles come into your path, that's fine. They're here. Let's lean into it. And so that was the way I led. And I felt it. And if you talk to my team that I led, they would probably tell you, yes, the fact that John was authentic and real and didn't sugarcoat things was helpful for us. Because I've seen too many leaders that heard someone say like, well, your job is to be like the umbrella for your team. You take all the rain and everything else and they're protected. Agree to a point, but like there's something about that strength and truth to me of like being open and honest, because that's going to build that connection. And then for me, when you have that trust built with any human, sales team, family, whatever it is, then you can also have the hard conversations too, right? Like the truth and love conversations. I've heard that term, which I love. It's just you got to have the respect to be able to, frankly, call someone out, and you want to do that respectfully too. But we got to do it out of love.
Well, and I think, John, even more importantly, you have to you can't ask of someone that you haven't asked of yourself first, right? You got to do it with respect. But I think if you haven't actually created that self-respect for yourself, it's really tough. It's really tough to ask someone to be in a respect, like with respect, if you haven't done it yourself.
Do you mind if I ask you, like, how do you go about that with the folks you work with in your team?
Um, I think that it's a really good question. I think that it's so often the self-exploration and the asking to tell the truth, to be vulnerable is that I lead with it, like, my team knows everything that happened with, like, my son, and I didn't sugarcoat it, just, John, just, and for the audience who's maybe just tuning in, um, I've talked a lot about this in previous, podcasts, but, my son was born on December 12th, 2023. 16 days later, he died. And, and we didn't sugarcoat it, and we were super real with it, not only in all of our companies and in all of, like, my coaching, but because I think that I found that by sharing it is that it actually created the permission, and you talk about, like, my son Benny's ripple, it's created the permission for other people to go, "Wait, there's something in my life that I've grieved," or, like, I can now be vulnerable, and so I just think it's so important. Like, if you want someone to lead with vulnerability, then you need to be vulnerable. If you want someone to lead with, like, leadership, then you need to actually lead with leadership. If you want someone to give you respect, then you need to lead with actually respect. Even down to the things like free time, like free days, what we call in terms of vacation time. Like, if you want to have as an entrepreneur, or like the quote quote, and I hate this word, but like the boss wants to have an incredible time where people respect your time. You have to respect other people's time first and make sure that they are getting those time frames. Um,
Thank you for sharing that. I was aware of that, and I commend you for. I can't imagine how hard that was, but taking something hard and doing something good with it, right? You're spot on. You model the way now, and now you're inspired by your son, and what a blessing that is to be able to wake up every day and know that his legacy will continue to live on. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and thank you. I mean, it definitely lives on. And for those of you, in terms of heard me talk about it, I'm just going to do a shameless plug. Check out 16days.org, which is our love letter to Benny, where we're actually giving the gift of time to parents in the NICU with their babies. And 75% of the rooms in our level 4 NICU did not have a parent in them the whole 16 days. So anyways, that's our little ripple. But it's so interesting, John, when we talk about that. Like, I was the guy through this that, I was in Starbucks, and Frank Sinatra song come on, and Benny was born on Frank Sinatra's on his birthday, and I'd be the guy who just would start crying. And I could sense in some people at first, you get the looks of some people going like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And the other people going like, "Stay away from that guy, unstable." And I think that weakness is sometimes even rooted in our Disney movies, and quite frankly, even sometimes into the bedrock of some of, like, our institutions. I was out coaching some entrepreneurs in Chicago, and we were talking about this idea of, like, shame, judgment. Where does all that, like, come from? And which, by the way, is oftentimes either like the what's manufactured from sharing weakness, or your perception of, if I share this weakness, this is what's going to be manufactured on the other side of this. But he brought up, he goes, because we started talking about this word sin, sin. And so many of the people who are listening to this understand, like, how sin is utilized. But he said, sin is also a term, and someone can fact check me on this, but he said sin is something that you use in archery. It's a term that they use in archery, and it just means off the mark. And that was so powerful to me, that when you are having moments that you could be perceived to have been weak, or could be perceived as weakness. Maybe it's just in terms of life's trajectory that's just off the mark. I mean, how does that land for you? I mean, you're coaching, like, leaders and, like, high performers and obviously in your own self-awareness journey.
Well, I mean, there's a deeper thing for me. I'm a spiritual guy. I'm a Christian, and so I think about sin. Obviously, we just have Easter, and I think we're all off the mark a lot, right? That's
Yeah.
just I mentioned we're kind of broken. I believe that. But I think there's a freedom in realizing that, right? When you're off the mark, I guess if you're in archery and you miss, what do? You have a choice. You can either complain about it or you can go and shoot again and figure it out.
Yep.
And if you miss, you go and you do it again, right? So this idea of imperfect progress, I've really had to embrace. I just left my 25-year corporate career in end of November. And this idea of relentless, imperfect progress, very uncomfortable at times, right? But just put yourself out there, continue to work. But also, now I think about things more holistically, where I take time to work out, or I have my morning ritual that I'm committed to, or make sure I'm home for family dinners and whatnot. But I think to your thought, I just think there's freedom in knowing, like, look, I'm going to be off the mark a lot, right?
Yeah.
I have freedom now. I'm 48. I know less than I knew 10 years ago, but I'm okay with that. Like, the older I get, the more I'm okay with not knowing everything. And honestly, my sales career changed when I finally decided I didn't have to be the smartest person in the room. I didn't have to talk in every meeting and always look for an opportunity to get my words in to show well, because it was all about me.
Yeah.
Everything shifted when I finally realized, how can I show up and serve? Maybe it's listening. Maybe it's checking out the guy at the end of the room and looking at his nonverbals during the presentation that's going on over there and jotting a note down. And maybe it's asking a curious question at the right time, right? At the right moment, and then shutting up and let the room go. And that hard lesson, because I had struggles trying to be the guy, go, 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 and realizing that, no, I mean, sometimes going from success to significance is actually slowing down more and being okay being off the mark. Like, I know now I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to say every word perfect with you. I know that, but I'm going to try. When I show up to something like this, I try to think about a feeling I want you to have, or the audience to have. Like, and the one I always go back to is loved and cared for. Like, I want people, when they experience me, I want them to feel loved and cared for. And I learned that in a speaking class I was in a few years ago of, when you're performing or you're presenting, when we take the focus off ourselves, because everybody gets nervous about presenting. I don't know if I've ever met anybody that doesn't. That's good. It's just normal. But, and I've coached a lot of people. Actually, I had a chance to coach Carrie before his TED Talk last year, which was phenomenal. Loved working with him. But the big unlock I see for people, and it was the big unlock for me, was, what do you want the audience to feel? Because once you take the onus off yourself and you put it on someone else, it takes away all the pressures. And then you can focus on, I don't have to get every word right, but if I can get the feeling right, and of course you do the work, you got to prepare. I'm not saying that, right? But it's just, I want these guys to feel inspired. I want them to feel excited. By the way, sometimes I want them to feel provoked, right? You can do that. And there are different actions you can play from a performative standpoint to make an audience feel something. But that's, to me, that's helped me not have to be perfect and be okay being off the mark. Because as long as I make them feel something, good things will happen.
Well, I think you said something so important, from success to significance. And I'm curious if you could, like, tell your 10-year-old self, your 23-year-old self, or anyone who's listening to this who goes, they've experienced the success and it feels hollow, right? I mean, I remember the first time I led a region in sales, and I remember, like, when I get there, like, I'm going to be on that mountain and the sky's going to open up, the sun's going to hit my face, and you realize no one cares. So when you think about this road to success to significance, how would you articulate that? What are the ingredients? I mean, if you were to articulate, what are the top three things that someone today could literally go, after listening to Jon, here are the 3 steps I'm gonna start to apply to my life today that help me go from success to significance, wherever you're at on that journey.
Yeah, I'd say first off, it's not about you, right? Not about me as an individual. It's about who I can serve. What seeds can I plant? Who can I bring with me on the journey, paying it forward? That's huge. That just again takes the onus off of you when you show up ready to serve. And I think about my model, the with intention model, is self intention. So you build yourself so that you can serve others. Like we still have to take care of ourselves, but it's so we can be put in a position to serve. So that's really important. Um, it's okay to not be okay would be the second one, right? If I'm talking to my 10-year-old self, like, hey, you may not know this right now, but you're going through some stuff. And I remember when my parents finally split and I went back to school, I felt like I remember thinking to myself, you don't deserve to grieve here because they're going through it. 26-year marriage has gone away. And I witnessed a lot of fighting and a lot of, I mean, I believe they loved each other at one time, but a lot of fighting, a lot of conflict. And I felt like, you can't grieve. They're the ones going through it, not you. Right. So that if I'm talking to myself, then I'm saying, no. This, you're part of it. This is a family unit. It's okay to show the weakness / strength in this moment. And then I would think it's this idea of belief comes to my heart right now. And I think of it as when you mix humility and confidence, I think you need both. Those ingredients mixed together bring belief. And I think believing that you're going to make it. So again, if I go back to my 10-year-old self, I would say, you're going to go through some stuff and it's going to be hard, but it's going to teach you something. And I talk to my son. I have a 17-year-old son who has battled some stuff. He's a great kid. And I try to tell him all the time, everything you've been through, you're going to have a story to tell. You're going to have lives to impact. So I know it can be hard at times, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that, right? We go through hard stuff. But what can you do with it? It's all, to me, life is two things. There's data. We have data coming in, and then there's meaning. And there's a middle ground. We have a choice when the data comes in, what we attribute the meaning to it, right? So this is truly, that's growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Carol Dweck, great book, Mindset. What meaning do we attribute to the data that comes in? And I think human nature is, I was this way for a long time, and I'm not immune to it now. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with everybody. There's times I have a victim mindset. I'll be honest, like something bad happens and I start blaming, complaining, and, woe is me. And I've gotten way better at pulling myself out of that. The data to meaning is probably, the gap's a lot closer for me now, because I'm like, okay, wait a second. Can I just stay in the space? Yeah, let me maybe grieve a little bit this, and maybe there's a little bit of this victim mindset, but let's
Yep.
get over that. Let's operate outside of that.
Well, I love you share that last part. I think oftentimes when people you want to talk about highlight reels and like Instagram reels, and people are these perceived experts. And I think the thing that I would, I think, articulate is that if you're not a practitioner of what you're preaching, that means you're not living, because it doesn't mean you're progressing. And so I love that you shared that, John. The fact is that you're not immune to it, because I think one of the things that afflicts so many people is that there's this idea that there is an end, that there's this horizon that, okay, when I get there, like when if I listen to this XYZ book, then I'm going to eliminate this. And it's like you never get to that horizon, because as soon as you excavate, you free up new space and room in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, for the things that maybe have been waiting for those things to be excavated to actually come to the surface so that you can actually further excavate.
Sure. Yeah, the work never ends. In fact, I would argue the better you get, the more work it takes, right? But you got to be okay with that, to know, like, okay, like I'm way more humble now than I was when I was a cocky 30-year-old sales rep that just got my dream job promoted, making six figures, thinking I had everything figured out. and I was living a lie. I was a mess, and that all eventually came forth. And now yes, I mean, we are all a work in progress. And if you embrace that, there's magic in that mindset.
Yeah. I love that, John. I want to transition here because on the other side of this truth telling, the sitting in this truth is opportunities. And you had a 25-year, clearly successful, uh, if you would say, corporate career. And most people would have said, "Hey, you know what? I'm making great money. It's predictable as any sales job can be." But you took a leap. You took a leap this last year, and I'm curious. Can you talk about your journey to that leap and what leap you did take? Um, and as you're jumping out of that plane, that proverbial plane, um, what's landed?
Yeah. So this was not a flash in the pan decision, impromptu. Hey, I'm leaving a 25-year career. I've got 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and an 11-year-old right now, and a wife that stays at home. And so financially, on paper, maybe not. If you just look at it clear as day that way, again, 25 years, I had a lot of equity, and honestly, I got to a point where I could have stayed for the next 10 to 12 years and rode into the sunset. It was a great company. I love the people, love our clients. I got to a point where I started to do this work and this journey, and it felt like I was being called to do more. So, of course, yeah, I wrote the book in 2022. I started to go out and speak mostly so we sold to the insurtech space. So insurance companies and body shops, streamlined software company that streamlined that industry. In every room I would go in and speak, I remember in Nashville, it was my biggest speech. Now, keep in mind, I'm a guy that had panic attacks 10 years ago. So there's another piece to the story of habits. And I went to Toastmasters every week for 2 years just to rebuild my confidence in speaking. And I took every opportunity to speak. So I did it scared all day long. And that's another huge lesson. You got to do things scared. You got to get uncomfortable. But I got off stage in Nashville as my biggest speech, 250, 300 people. And it was the first time I wore one of those wraparound microphones. I remember being in the green room. I followed this comedian, Dusty Slay, who's a pretty popular comedian on Netflix. And I think after me was John Acuff, pretty popular speaker, author. So I'm like, here's this dude just trying to figure out, the speaking career. And I got off stage, and literally coming out of the green room, there was a guy waiting for me, and he gave me a hug. And he said, "Thank you so much." And he shared his story with me. And I knew at that moment that I was called to do the work, that if I could be a light for somebody and unlock somebody, because too many people struggle and are too afraid to talk about it, right? So, and that's the same story I get pretty much every stage I'm on or every room I'm in. And it's not me. It's just, I am just like Harry was for me, the ripple, right? Now I'm paying that forward and I'm sharing my journey, not perfectly, but sharing it. And then it's allowing other people to then do this. So, I felt the call to, you talk about significance. I looked at my next 25 plus years. I know you're a strategic coach guy, right? I love Dan Sullivan's work. I think about, I want to do this work forever. I never want to retire. And I felt like I could take the easy route and continue to make great money and get the stock and truly golden handcuffs. Like a lot of people think I'm crazy, by the way. And maybe rightfully so, but I don't think so. From their perspective, rightfully so. How could you give up all this money and 25-year career? But I had to do it. I knew I would have regrets if I didn't make the move. My dad, with that, owning that Italian grocery store as a kid, he was an entrepreneur as well as a teacher. My parents actually, I thought about when I was in college, I wanted to be a school teacher or soccer coach if I didn't make it pro. And they said, no, we're not helping you pay for college unless you go into business. So I got a finance degree, moved to Chicago, and ended up with the software company. And, but there's always been an element of a desire to be an entrepreneur and run my own thing. Right. And you can kind of argue a little bit you're that way in sales. But there was still, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of challenges that way. And and the freedom that in the 4 months, It's all been like the margin I have now to create, engage. I mean, I'm down in Cedarville University all day talking to you. I'm going to be in this leadership advisory board meeting all day. I would have never been able to do that before, right? I would have been on the road, traveling, meeting with clients, that sort of thing. But here, the other piece that I've realized too is that never burn a bridge. Your network's always your network. Your personal brand is always your personal brand. So I've been blown away by just people that I've had in my network forever that still are friends. Some are becoming clients with this new work. I'm doing a lot of coaching, speaking, workshops, those sorts of things. I kind of view this as like a trusted advisor. That's what I view my role as now for companies and people. And of course, the people that are hiring me are sales executives and leaders now, because that's the world I came from. So I pinch myself. I love the work. I'm building this as I go. It's been fun. I have big goals, but it's all comes down to impact and significance. That's what for me. That's the legacy. And I've done a lot of vision work and thought about where do I, on my 80th birthday, what do I want people to say about me? I've got a newspaper article up in my room, in my home office in 2030. And it basically looking backwards, what's happened. I have a vision, the company is called Intentional Growth Partners. I have a vision that this becomes one of the top leadership advisory firms in the world. I don't know if it's going to happen, but you better have your vision and have it in front of you every day so you see it. I'm a big believer in that. So, I'll pause.
No, what I love about you doing that, John, is there's a saying that my one of my coaches in college. So I ran track and played football in college and
Where'd you go to school?
Luther College, and it was a D3 college, and I left actually midway through my junior year. I, when I realized that I was like, I'm not tall enough, not fast enough, can't jump high enough. And that's actually probably why I went to college in the first place, is to get out, get MBA in real life. And as you know, as you go to college, you get to experience a little bit of life. But one of my coaches had this saying is that you aim for perfection and you fail and hit excellence. And so that's what I love about this newspaper. I love how you actually call it a newspaper, not a vision board, but a newspaper. Like it's been printed, that people are reading about this. I think that is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you a little more on it if I could, because and I got to give credit. Stuart Day is a professor or the dean at Kansas University, one of their campuses. And I just did an executive coach certification through the Center for Executive Coaching. And he did a piece at the end. He's part of that program. And he's the one that challenged us to do this. So, and I've done other vision work, never a newspaper article, but here it's actually, I have a picture of the World Cup soccer trophy. And I have a very close friend who's a professional soccer coach. And so I would love for him to be the next U.S. coach. I think he's got the ability to be that potentially. Now, hopefully they win the World Cup next year and the current coach stays and they continue to win, but probably not a high likelihood. So on there are quotes from him of, hey, we just won the World Cup, U.S. national team, and we couldn't have done it without Intentional Growth Partners and Jon's team. Not just about me. My plan is to build a team here as well. And so there was something powerful about having that quote down. And guess what? I sent it to him. I sent it to the coach, my buddy. I'm like, hey, man, this, just so you know, I'm putting this out there. I'm shooting my shot. You got to think big about this. I don't know if this opportunity is going to come, but here's what I'm thinking about. And so I don't know if it's going to happen. I have no idea, but having that North Star out there and putting that into the world, I think probably helps the situation, right? I mean, I think anytime you do any of this vision work, which I'm sure you've done a bunch of in your coaching, it's really powerful stuff.
It so is. I mean, like Ben Hardy in his book "Be Your Future Self." I mean, he talks about like all physical creation is preceded by mental creation. And that so sticks with me. Yet we all just go, well, you know what? Like I can't call my shot. I can't really see it because I don't know if I can believe it. And I mean, it's so crazy. John, I want to talk a little bit about, you talked about this, that you said this phrase, I felt called to more. And this is something that I don't feel like that I hear a lot of conversation around, like, what does that actually mean? How did you know? I always go back to the parable. My dad was a pastor, and but again, just like lyrics and movie quotes, I'm horrible at my memory of this. But the thing that always comes back to me when I hear you say this, um, I felt called to more. And you had that person hug you after like that main stage speech. Um, is that the parable of like uh, God coming to dinner, right? And then there's a knock at the door, and then someone says, like, feed me. The next knock, and clothe me. And then finally God comes to dinner, and then they say, like, hey, we've been waiting for you. And he says, well, I've actually knocked on the door multiple times. And so I'm curious, can you quantify? I mean, that was like that final straw, right? That person hugged you and said thank you. But how would someone identify? Can you just share your story? How would someone identify like that there might be more for you?
Hmm. Yeah, I think what's coming up for me is just to tell a little bit more of the backstory, and hopefully this resonates with someone. So in ninth grade, I was a speech champion at my high school, St. Edward High School in Cleveland. So I won. There's this big competition, speak in your class, and then you go to like the main competition. I won it. English teacher, I meet with him, Brother Joe. He sits down, my mom and I, says, I think Jon can be the first 4-time champion ever. I think he's that good. And so I got cocky. I thought I was a great speaker, and I never really worked at it. Contest comes around sophomore year. I show up. I kind of wing it. I finished third. So I had enough of the talent to be in the top 3, but I wasn't good enough to be number 1. So I never really worked at the craft of speaking after that. I thought I had it all figured out. And I started my sales career and was pretty good at sales, so I could get in the room and talk and whatnot. Then, of course, as I shared, I start having panic attacks speaking. So like I went from being a champion speaker to literally not being able to speak. And the journey back has been 12 years, 14 years of, I mentioned Toastmasters every week. Any opportunity to speak, I'm going, right? So sports team asked me to speak. I remember 2014, one of my buddies coached the football team, asked me to go speak. And I said, I'm there. So nervous. Like there's scar tissue. There's still scar tissue today. When I prepare, I probably over prepare, but there's still elements of like, what if this happens again? Now I've done it enough. Once I get on a stage, it subsides after 10 seconds and I'm good to go. But I feel like everybody has potential. I believe it's God-given. We all have this parable of the talents, right? We all have this God-given potential. I think it's our job to fulfill that. That's our gift back to God and to the world to fulfill that. So I believe that we all have an opportunity to write our own story, right? My story, you could argue, started strong in soccer and speaking, and then I literally hit rock bottom in soccer and then panic attacks. And the journey's been, how do I rebuild and how do I get this back? Because I knew it was this talent I had. And so I believe that I was created for this now. That's why I do believe it's a calling, and that I would be selling not just myself short, but my family short if I didn't go out and do this. Now, I could absolutely fail all day long. Like I know, and this was not an easy decision leaving this 25-year corporate job. Very prayerful, my wife couldn't be more behind me, by the way, than anybody. I sat my kids down over the last 2 years. Hey, this is what this could look like. Very planful around financials. I didn't want to change lifestyle, anything like that. And so far, so good with that. And I believe that the business is going to grow exponentially past where I was before. But I think it's this element of betting on yourself. And too often we buy into the system and we think we have to go to school and get our college degree and then work for the company and get the 401k and get the benefits, which I'm about to go off. I have a 6-month subsidized benefits. Next month I go off. I'm on my own. Like I have Cobra until next month. So now but we think that's the scarcity mindset again. Well, I'm not immune to it, but this idea of you flip that to the abundance of like, what are the possibilities that lie ahead? If I didn't make this move, I don't meet a guy like you. If I didn't make this move, I don't get invited to this leadership advisory. I'm getting in rooms now and being around people just by people see that I made the move and they're applauding it. And as I said earlier, a lot are saying, wow, I can't believe you had the courage to do it. And I hope that it gives courage to everybody else because I think, yeah, I'm betting on myself, but I'm also betting on you and betting on others that I've done the work in my career, in my life. I feel like God's put me in this position to serve. So now I'm going to be bold and let it happen. I mean, I truly believe that. And I don't know, it's changing by the day, in all honesty, different opportunities that are coming up. And when I'm thinking about a second book, but um, I think it's this, yes, this, and I'll say it again, bet on yourself. If you can't bet on yourself, what, I mean, and to model the way for your kids, right? Like, I know my son is watching. I know my daughters are watching, and to know like dad's actually not just settling. I think it's so easy in this life to settle. And of course, if you're paid well, and I'm not like, look, you have to support family, and I get that, but I think too many people settle and they just go into this career they don't love. And yeah, they may get a paycheck, but they're not passionate about it. And at the end of the day, they're not going to do great work. It's not going to be sustainable.
You know, I love that you're bringing this up. My vision, especially it's come back to me as of late, is one from my freshman year of college. Dr. Tim Peter, he was a director for the men's group. So when you came in at Luther, one of the things they're known for is their music program, which is one of the major appeals that I wanted to go to them because I originally started off as a music major. After about 3 weeks of music theory, I changed my major. But what I remember is that first year in the freshmen, they conjugate like all the men. So the men just sang with men. So I had 85 other men and the women sang with the women. And so 85 men that were singing every single day for like an hour and a half. And I just remember a couple moments, and it wasn't just a couple, it happened often. We'd be singing. And, as you learn to tune in, right? So it's like what you talked about. You're no longer trying to be the voice that can be heard, but you're trying to actually blend with the voice so other people can actually hear the music. And I remember there are so often that we would look up from our music, and Dr. Peter is no longer directing. He's just standing there, tears coming down his face. And I remember going, I would love to have, quote unquote, a job, a career that is like that. I mean, it wasn't just in practice. We would be in performances, and all of a sudden you just would look up. And I just remember going, how lucky is he? There's zero golden handcuffs of like stock options, benefits. Is that literally he is living in this like moment of where, like, why would you ever want to retire from that? How could you ever get burned out from that beauty that he was helping to create into the world? And I think when I listened to you, John, in your story, uh, you went from being like, you could just conduct the music, right? That's what you were kind of doing, running sales teams, and you were just conducting like the music. But when you actually started to actually be music that other people could hear, all of a sudden it's like the guy hugs you afterwards. And and man, how that just it's so impactful that you shared that story because that's what it brought out in me. I was going like, this is your Dr. Peter moment.
Well, okay. So you run some strategic coach, you bring everybody in, right? And
Yep.
you train, right? For a
Yep.
full day, 8 hours.
Yep.
I imagine I've never been to one, but my guess is you try to facilitate the room in that container and orchestrate.
Yes.
It was Dr. Peter,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The magic's probably in the room's thinking, with the work they're doing, the relationships that are being formed, the conversations that are being had, right?
Yes.
Not
Yes.
about you. However, you are facilitating the
Yes.
environment, right?
Yes.
And so that's been a big learning for me. So I just ran my first cohort. I had 13 sales executives, business owners that I have a course, the With Intention course. They have access to the course. access to the book. We got together once a week. It just ended. We're moving to like a mastermind format. And I went into this thing thinking, all right, they're going to take the course and I'm going to teach the with intention stuff and it's going to be great. That's not where the magic was. The magic was in showing up, providing the safe space. Yeah, maybe doing a little bit of teaching, but then opening up the room, letting the room dictate what was going to happen. Right. And I surveyed all these guys and they all said, what was the most impactful thing? Connection, camaraderie.
Come on.
Right. And that's that Dr. Peter. That's the true orchestra that's like creating the notes together. And that's my mission is now. And when I left, honestly, 4 months ago, speaking, writing, those sorts of things. Now I'm realizing community connection is what I love. And that's this next iteration of what this is going to look like. And so, yeah, man, there's magic. That's an amazing story. There's magic and you see it. I'm sure you have Dr. Peter moments when you're running these groups where you just sit back. Like I had one in this workshop in January I did, the same one I mentioned earlier with the executives talking about the miscarriage and stuff. I had him do this exercise, which one of Harry and my mentors is this guy, Chet Scott. Harry knows him really well. He's done a lot of work with him. And he has this thing called 7 good minutes he does, which is essentially you pair people up. And if I'm leading, I can only ask you questions for 7 minutes. And open-ended questions, I got to keep you talking for 7 minutes. And then after 7, we switch and you do the same.
Wow.
It's a lot harder than you would think.
That sounds potentially really difficult.
But here's where the magic is. So every time I do this in a room now, and this happened in Arizona, I just did a before supper club. I spoke in Columbus here to a bunch of cybersecurity executives. I just did it on a virtual call to a medical sales team last week in Texas. So always the first one you do 7 minutes and then you switch. The second one, I always let it go. I give a little bit more room. It's probably unfair to the first 7 minutes, but I'll usually let it sometimes go double. The energy in the room goes up. It's hard to bring them back. There's an art to bringing them back.
Herding cats.
But because again, people take the focus off themselves and they put it onto the other person. And when you get very curious about someone that's in front of you, the world opens up, right? This is like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Like everybody. So, a tactical thing to do next dinner party you go to, see how long you can get someone to talk. Just ask curious, open-ended questions. Say the word, tell me more, and what else? You will make someone's evening. They will think you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. And not that you're doing it on purpose to be the greatest thing, but it's amazing the connection you can build just by being curious. And allowing that, the magic to happen, as you said, in that room is just this connection piece. I love it. I'm so passionate about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I love that when you're talking about number one, I love that exercise. So totally stealing that. You know who I actually, who I want to do this with actually specifically, is with my kids and my wife. My wife and I, we talk a lot, but there's a difference between talking and really going deep. And so I'm really curious to see, my wife and I, we live together, we work together. So we do a lot of talking, but I'm really curious and also with like my kids for 7 minutes, just to ask them that. Um, I love that you're talking about this idea of actually being curious. I think that the core ingredients, if I was to break down how you can help people feel loved, is to be seen, heard, and understood. And when you can help people do those in a way that's so authentic, that allows them to feel seen, heard, and understood, and not only that, but like respected and appreciated. I mean, what an absolute gift! What an absolute gift! And by the way, you don't have to be John Maxwell, Jon Giganti, to that for that to matter, right? You do not have to be like these incredible experts in this for that to matter. What do you think keeps people from wanting to be curious?
We're inherently selfish, right? That's just how we are. Like, think about sales. You're paid to grow revenue, to bring in business. So therefore, when you wake up, you're thinking about, how do I bring in business? The key unlock, and I experienced this, going from selfish to servant, right? But it's got to be authentic. Going from, it's about me and making my quota, to no, it's about serving the client, helping them win. I get very curious about their business, and whatever that means, then, well, I'll give you a tactical thing. We did this when I was going through trying to figure out, like, all right, how do I reinvent my career? How do I do this the right way? One of the key changes I made is I tried to start every client engagement with, I called it a vision meeting, where I'm going to go back to vision, or strategy meeting. And I tried to get on a whiteboard. And the goal was simply to get them talking, but I wanted to be in the room on a whiteboard. Much harder to do after COVID, people not meeting as much face to face. You can still do it. But I would get people on a whiteboard, and I would literally say, this is the best sales question I've ever heard. I learned from this guy, Barrett Callahan. If we're sitting in the room a year from now, what's a 10 out of 10 for you? What has to happen for this to be a 10 out of 10? And I would get people talking. I would always say, like, it's not about CCC, not about us. Like, what's your vision? Where are you headed? Okay. And then it would layer down, like, all right, you said you wanted to do X, Y, or Z. Tell me more. What does that mean? Okay. Can you put some metrics behind that? Like, what are the actual KPIs behind it? Okay. What are the challenges? And maybe it's like a mini SWOT, right? So you spend about an hour, and we would start to hear from clients. I had clients say, I've never looked at my business this way. You just helped me essentially build out my business plan for the next 2 years. But the cool part was, and I kind of happened upon this, I just tried this out. We would take pictures of the whiteboard, and we would show it in future meetings. And so, dare I say, sales became easy, because anytime we would bring up a sales situation, it became, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, you said you wanted to go here. I think we may have a method to get you there. Are you interested? And most of the time they would say, absolutely, because we built the trust in the room, right, to get to the point where they know we had their best interest in mind. And guess what? If they said no, that's on them. That's not on us. We're just showing you a means to an end. I think in your LinkedIn profile, it says end in mind, I believe, one of the taglines. I love that. So if you can get someone, and this goes for families, wives, spouses, kids, that's why I love the vision work. What's the end game? Begin with the end in mind. If I can find out where you want to go, I have to get curious and understand that. Then I can show you a path to potentially get there. And by the way, I think the greatest thing a salesperson could ever do is let a client know it's okay to say no, right? If this isn't, I don't want to be a maybe. I want to, let's be to heck yes, or no, it's not the right time, or it's not the right fit. And so it was amazing. I saw my career transform. That's how I ended up getting the leadership role, because I changed my approach to things, and it built so much trust, but I had to do it authentically. Like, I had to really care. And so you say something really important about people want to be seen and understood. I mean, that's the same thing in business. Like, if you can show that you care about someone, that's human nature. So again, I go back, like, we're inherently selfish. So we have to get out of our head, I think, out of our head and into our heart. That enables us to connect with someone else's heart.
It's so interesting to me. In our conversation, we're talking about weakness, and actually how weakness actually is an actual strength. It's sitting in that truth. Now we talk about, like, love, and it's so interesting in business, especially talking about love seems so, like, frou-frou-y, so sort of like, oh, like kumbaya, let's sit around like the campfire. But it truly is these things. Like, it's why Brene Brown is so effective, because but talking about vulnerability, and it's the humanness that is actually the category one opportunity that everyone has, right? It's actually not the tactics, great, right? And you can hop on Chat GPT and be like, give me the most 10 non-obvious tactics. But being human, you can't really commoditize that. You can't actually outsource that, because I think we have these built-in receptors to go, that's bullshit. Like, you're not being authentic. You're not being genuine. Now, someone could ask the exact same questions that you just articulated, but done in a way could go, this guy's a creep.
Yeah. And it'll play out over time, right? You may be able to fool someone once or twice. I had people fooled early in my career when I was super selfish, but over time it played out, right? And then conversely, over time, because when we change our approach and for me, I know I love Simon Sinek's work, Start with Why. I think start with who is actually more important. Who are we showing up as? And if I show up with you and want you to be cared for and you to be loved, then my next client meeting, same thing. And with my children, I want you to be cared for and loved. And you actually are intentional about that. And that's who you're showing up as. Not perfect. Let's win the day. Let's win the moments in the day. Right. And if we fail, that's okay. Let's step up and try to do it again tomorrow. But when we start with who, we put ourselves in a position to serve. And that's where that love and connection and trust and the depth and the meaning of life, that's significance to me.
Yeah, I love that. I want to talk a little bit again about um, seeing the bigger meaning, seeing the end in mind, seeing the thing that in terms of that might make people take a leap. Because I think most people think, oh, well, I've already taken a leap because I'm an entrepreneur. But I will tell you that I've been in so many rooms in that people. Dan Sullivan has the saying that he always says. He goes, you know, what got you out of Egypt won't get you into the promised land, which is so true. But I took that actually even a step farther. I actually looked at that as a filter. You had golden handcuffs coming out of the corporate world. Well, as entrepreneurs, often the baby that we birth becomes the Egypt that is actually keeping us from our promised land company. What would you tell people who are listening, who maybe are listening to this going, they feel they more, whether they're like growth minded, high performing people in the corporate world who have maybe had this meeting, but more importantly, and more likely, entrepreneurs who are listening to this who go, you know what, paycheck's incredible. You know, I got it wired. I got so much freedom of time, but my freedom of purpose bucket, by the way, these are all like strategic coach, like core concepts. My freedom of purpose bucket is not overflowing, right? Because when you go success to significance, right? Significance, you just replace that with purpose. Um, what would you tell them that you know now, 4 months after you've made the leap, that would help them maybe go bet on yourself?
Two things. One, never stop evolving. This is a never ending process, right? So Amazon had a whole thing. Bezos had a whole thing called Day One. And I think they actually have a building in Seattle called the Day One. But it was when he did his annual shareholder letters, he would always talk about it. And they always said, look, um, we always have to think day one. Never get complacent. I think he said day two is stasis if we get that mindset. So if you always think like
Ooh,
you're in this permanent evolution mode, I'm always evolving. Again, imperfectly. But I also think it's about who you surround yourself with. And everybody knows the quote, Jim Rohn, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I truly believe that. And I think it goes for books you read and podcasts you listen to and whatever inputs you have. That if you're not in the right group and you're not surrounded by the right people or the right inputs, change it. Try something out because there is magic. You said something earlier that really hit me good is truth tellers. I love, Carrie talks a lot about truth tellers too. I think it's crucial to have truth tellers in your life that can call you out in a loving way. But most people are averse to that a little bit, right? Like, hey, I don't want the feedback. I'm good. I mean, it's painful, but you got to hug the cactus. Right? I don't know if you ever heard that term. Like that's how we evolve and get better. We've got to like dive into this. Yeah. So I think those two things put you on the right path.
that's amazing. John, I want to thank you for being here today. What an incredible conversation. Uh, if people want to find more about you, right? Like books, podcasts, more about your company because they go, ooh, I need John in my life. Uh, where do they find you? By the way, feel free to plug books if you have a potential upcoming book.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. It's been a privilege to be on as well. JonGiganti.com. So it's JonGiganti. giganti.com. So I've got book, course, coaching, consulting, all that stuff, speaking, all the assets there. Feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I publish pretty much every day on LinkedIn. That's a new practice that I put into place about a year ago. So I'm publishing a lot. I would love to connect. I have a free newsletter that you could subscribe to. I publish every Saturday morning at 8:15, which is inspiration. I do an article, a quote, and a visual just to inspire people. It's a quick 2 to 3 minute read each Saturday morning. And yeah, I'd love to connect. I love meeting new people. And man, this is awesome, Ben. I love all you're doing. I feel like we're kindred spirits, and amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Jon, you have a huge future ahead of you. You're already blessing people. You've already done like massive things, regardless of whether you did it inside the corporate world or now you're doing it actually on your own, which my opinion is that entrepreneurship is the greatest expression of self-love. So I think as from one entrepreneur to another, like you're going to do big things. I can just tell already. And so if audience, if you aren't taking advantage of that, I mean, he's got some free stuff that you can actually continue to evolve, excavate, and aspire. I think I think you'd be missing out. Jon, one of the things I like to do is to give my guests the last word or phrase. What's the last ripple that you want to go out to our audience?
Bet on yourself. No one else is going to bet on you. So bet on yourself and just trust it and make it happen. You're going to figure it out.
That's amazing, Jon. Thank you for the time today. Thank you for all of the incredible nuggets. I know this will be a podcast I'm going to go back and listen to because, man, you said a couple things where I was like, I need to make sure I jot this down. Thanks for being here and looking forward to when you have your new book come out, getting you back on here.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.